Welcome back to another episode of Becoming Limitless. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome one of the world's most influential voices in longevity science and human optimization to the podcast, Siim Land. Siim is an 8-time best-selling author, keynote speaker, anthropologist, and educator whose work bridges ancient human insight with cutting-edge longevity research. He has spent over a decade researching practical strategies to extend health span and optimize biological performance. And his book, The Longevity Leap, something you must read, has reached readers across the globe. Siim's approach is evidence-informed, deeply practical. He has built a global platform through books, podcasts, and content that cuts through hype to empower real behavior change. What is most compelling about Siim is that he does not just talk about longevity. He embodies it through disciplined lifestyle practices focused on movement, metabolic health, stress adaptation, environment, and recovery. Something I'm very passionate about and both of us have in common. Siim recently relocated to the UAE, a region that is rapidly emerging as a global hub for longevity innovation and biohacking. Today we will explore not only his science-based strategies, but also how context, community, and culture shape our ability to live healthier, longer lives. Please welcome Siim Land with me.
Thank you.
So happy to have you with me.
Happy to be here, yeah.
So you moved recently to Dubai.
Yes.
Can we start there, I guess?
A few months ago, yeah.
Yeah. How is that treating you? What do you think about the move and the area, and perhaps inspire people about why you made the choice to move here?
Yeah, so the reason primarily was that, as you said, it's becoming a big hotspot for longevity and just health globally. So it's just a good opportunity for me to, build my brand and build my business and, connect with all the other people in the space. I was in Estonia, which is a bit like further away from everyone else, and there's no, I guess, practical reason for me that I need to be in Estonia other than a family. So yeah, it made like a good plan to move here, at least for the foreseeable future, with my wife.
Amazing. And how are you finding the amazing community and like the vibe and the environment? I can see already that you could barely have any more time, right? Like there's so much demand.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely very social, or it's a lot, interactive, what I'm used to, which is still a good thing.
Yeah.
And, I think it's very oriented towards speed as well, that, we scheduled this podcast, last week.
Yes.
Something like that. So it's, things are happening fast, which, I personally like. I like to do things fast.
Yeah.
That, I have another podcast later today, which we scheduled yesterday.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the speed of things for sure.
Yeah, so things get done. And one of my favorite things is that how close the community is in our space. Everyone is very helpful. Everyone wants to contribute. Everyone wants to kind of partner up and things, like
and
that.
It's definitely like global as well. You have people from, all around the world. I have another friend, Lucas, who also moved here. He's from Australia.
Yeah,
and
he's been on the podcast. He's a good friend of mine. We've known him for a couple of years.
Yeah, so there's people from Europe and States and stuff. So it's a good place.
Amazing. So, I mean, the region is quickly becoming the center for all of this. So many amazing people like yourself are hailing from this space at the moment. And those that are not, they're hoping to come here. And there are some huge names in the longevity and biohacking and just health in general, be it massive organizations or individuals, that in 2026 and 2027, they're making this region their home. So exciting times ahead. And I think you've obviously, me being here for over 20 years, I think you made the right move. So I'm so happy to have you here, to have good people around us to kind of do and walk the talk and spread the good word. You have an anthropology background. How does that change the lens of what you do on longevity and your own health span? How does that apply?
Well, I think traditionally people would see anthropology as a field that, in the context of longevity, would look into things like paleontology and archaeology and how people used to live in the past, which obviously has a huge impact as well on our present health and living. I do have a background in those like physical types of anthropology fields, but I mostly, at least my education was mostly in like the cultural anthropology as well. So like more of the humanitarian side of anthropology, and that what I look at it with that lens into the longevity space. I look at it in the sense of how does the human species evolve in the present moment, and where are we going in the context of these breakthroughs in medicine, longevity, and science. So how does that going to affect our development in the future? So I'm, aside from the health thing, I'm also interested in like the philosophical and ethical thing of how does health and life extension influence humans as a species and us as individuals.
Because the numbers are staggering coming up with the number of people that will be in their 60s, for example, in the next 20 years or so.
Yeah.
And more people will be in their 80s and 70s, even more. It's multiplying, I think, 4 or 5 times on what we have right now. So the impact on that, on everything, resources, social impact and otherwise, is incredible. And I'm not sure how much people think about that, versus like the latest peptide or, so, and I think you and I also share another thing in common when it comes to that, because a lot of my work is based on wisdom of the ages too, because this region is incredibly rich in science, in history, in sort of stuff that we did naturally that now, are becoming part of almost every biohacker's strategy. And it's fascinating to me to see certain things that I've done even as a childhood, or stuff that are done in the region, that we've done naturally, we've done authentically, or without even thinking about it, but it has an amazing value for our biology and our overall well-being. Things such as the moment that the weather is a little bit better, windows are always open in the home, linen and pillows and stuff like that put in the sun. I remember as a child, like my mother would do that, and it would put it in the sun for, disinfecting and kind of adding life to the home itself in general. And now, we preach about, air your homes, stop being inside that box, spend time outside. There's a lot of that. So I love the impact of that, and I think we have a couple of friends also that kind of focus on this, because I know that you're going to be hopefully part of the Holo Life Summit in a couple of months in Monaco, and also the founder of that is again into all of this. It's all about how tradition plays into who we are as human beings. We can't just avoid that. Obviously, medicine plays an important role, but there's a lot of other things that come into play.
Right.
And one of the things that I always say in relationship to this is that longevity happens mostly outside of the clinic. And I feel that you agree with that too. There's so much lifestyle, so much culture, societal impact, community, that has much greater impact overall than what happens within a clinic setting.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, I absolutely agree that you can't make up for a bad lifestyle if you just go to a clinic and get some treatments, or even medicines and pharmaceuticals. They can only get you so far. They can make up for some aspects of poor lifestyle, and they can enhance someone's overall health status in certain contexts. But if you're not sleeping enough, if you're overweight, if you're eating a bad diet, not exercising, then you're missing out on a lot of potential of the gains.
Yeah, and I think most people don't realize that they're doing these things, or they're not doing them. So it's difficult for a lot of us, especially when we're not prioritizing what is important for our own well-being, and then we get surprised when we fall sick, and then we seek help. But it's a little sad to me sometimes where when all of the attention is going towards what's happening in the clinic rather than focusing on the outside. And now my rationale on this, what I think, I don't know what you think about this, but for my rationale on it is that it's easier for people. It's a shorter cut, prioritizing movement because that's work, that's effort, that's sweat. Prioritizing community or controlling their thoughts, or in your case, you do incredibly well, is how you manage stress, which is, I believe, it's one of the main things that you must work on, and all of the different sources that it comes from. So the one thing that you will notice here quickly is that because the lifetime, as you said, is so quick, it gets to you. You have to adjust how you manage your own stress because it creeps up on you, this constant on all the time, So it's definitely one thing that people in this region should keep an eye on because we're different than most other places. There is no off button for lifestyle here, or there's always something to do. So that does not contribute to longevity. And that's the other aspect of, I think, that you and I also agree on, is that geography is important for longevity too. And I think as part of, from an anthropological perspective, that also plays a major role. The heat, all of that, and I'm sure you'll begin to experience it very soon. Have you been here in the heat, by the way?
No.
You haven't yet. Okay, so you'll have an experience on that, and what does it mean to you, and all of this. So you and I emphasize quite a bit. Also, we have so much in common, and that's why I love these conversations with you. And I'm so thrilled of having you in the country, and for us to communicate a little bit more. Another thing we emphasize on is muscle, and movement and fitness. And obviously, you walk the talk better than most people that I know. And you don't like me saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway, that you are one of the youngest people biologically in the Olympics, the unofficial Olympics of that. And obviously can only happen if several things are done right. The sleep, the food, the everything, the movement, and so on. Especially, what's happening up here,
Right.
your emotional state and nervous system and things like that. So why do you think, in your words, in your opinion, muscle is so central for longevity?
Yeah, so if you look at what people die to, then a lot of them have to do with metabolic health or accidental deaths. And in elderly people, the leading cause of accidental deaths is falls. So if you fall and break a hip, then the likelihood of someone dying within a year is quite high if they have low muscle mass.
Yep.
And muscle is a very protective organ, so it obviously helps with metabolic health. You have a slightly higher basal metabolic rate, which means that it's going to be easier to lose weight. Plus, it's a huge glucose sponge that it helps to store glucose as muscle glycogen.
Yeah.
And research also finds it has a lot of immunomodulatory benefits and cognitive benefits. So yeah, it's a very central organ to just overall health and not to mention fitness. But it also is kind of the byproduct of doing the things that help to build muscle. So you're not going to build muscle by just sitting on a couch. So you need to be doing things that help you to build muscle, which is going to be some form of exercise, specifically resistance training.
Yeah.
So arguably a lot of the benefits of muscle come from the exercise itself, not the muscle just having, because obese people have also kind of slightly higher amounts of muscle than the average person because they're just obese. But the benefits come from actually doing the things that also help you to build the muscle.
Yeah.
So resistance training, it is probably one of the best ways to improve insulin sensitivity and help with glucose regulation. And just the exercise itself has systemic benefits on lowering inflammation, helping with bone density, helping with cardiac function, and I don't think there's anything that exercise doesn't improve.
I think
in your human physiology. Obviously, you can take it too far, but moderate amounts of exercise is going to be net positive in all aspects of health.
It has to be right for you, right? Like
Mm.
it's if you're male, if you're female, if you're which decade of your
Right.
life you're in, and all of these different things. But ultimately, there is no reason if things are done right for you not to be able to put muscle on,
Mm.
and it should be a priority. The other thing that also is about muscle that I find fascinating, and yesterday I was at another conference, we were talking about this. It's an endocrine system, it's part of the endocrine system, so it manages your hormones too. And then what I find for me personally, and I think you do too, and quite a few people that I kind of interact with, is that it also helps with mental health.
Mm.
So that movement, that the endorphins that you get out of moving, it also gives you purpose. There's so many different benefits. Like you cannot understate the value, overstate, I mean, the value of muscle.
Yeah.
So it affects so many different aspects of our lives. It then becomes part of a larger system because it helps with sleep. It helps with the how your gut works, how your microbiome works, all sorts of different things like that, which is just absolutely awesome. The only thing that surprised me is that it's always been underappreciated in these
Right.
conversations, because it sounds simple that we're talking about muscle, but it's still most people don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how much you say it, still most people don't do it.
Yep.
And they're going to the next thing that perhaps is easier to do, with terrible results. You and I began to do so well in VO2, in HRV, in our body compositions, because we put in the work. This is not something that you could do overnight. It's a lifestyle, and it's simple as that.
Yeah.
So if you are not in a good place in your health, it is not by chance. If you are in a great place in your health, it's not by chance either. So it's you have to work for either one. It's the choices are yours.
Yeah.
Which then, one thing that you said that I picked up on, which is because it's so satisfying to work out, feeling strong, the endorphins, the community around it, etc. A lot of people, women and men, end up overdoing it, right? So, and what I see continuously, and we talked about this when when I was on your podcast, the recovery aspect of it. Most of us miss that part. I can wholeheartedly attest that almost all of my gains wouldn't be possible if I didn't prioritize my recovery. What is your take on recovery, and how can people value it more? So we're strict about our gym routines. We're strict about what we do, for those that are doing it right, and those that are hoping to do it right. But when it comes to recovery, we always seem to fall short. What is your take on that?
Yeah, people like to talk about sleep and don't overdo do it and get enough nutrition. Those are very important, but I think the foundation to recovery is how much are you doing it. So if you exercise 20 hours a day for a week, then that will lead to overtraining, regardless of your nutrition and the sleep.
Exactly.
So that's why it is important to just gauge how much should you be doing and understand how much is appropriate for your body and your particular circumstance right now. Now, based on the research, it's not an easy thing to do because there's a lot of different nuances between, how much rest are you having between sets and how long are those sets, how intense are those sets. There are some analyses trying to estimate, okay, how much resistance training, for example, is optimal for overall health. And they kind of find that there's this U-shaped curve that it's not enough is associated with increased mortality, and too much is associated with increased mortality, and the sweet spot is somewhere between like 160 to 200 minutes per week, which is hard to estimate accurately because of what I said. There's a lot of different ways to do resistance training,
Right.
different rest periods. Are you resting 30 seconds or 3 minutes? There's a huge difference between that.
Right, of course.
So I wouldn't say that that would be the answer, that you just look at the 160 to 200 minutes.
Yeah.
But I would say that you would benefit from appropriate recovery after workouts. So I would say let's say every other day is appropriate for most people. That you do some form of resistance training. Now there are some days you can skip the weekend, for example, you just rest on the weekends. So you'll end up with probably like 3 days a week of resistance training for maybe 30 minutes at least, up to 60 minutes. I would say that's like a sweet spot for the most regular people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're a more experienced athlete, you've been working out for decades, you know your body, etc., then you can also work out every day with appropriate recovery and just listening to your body. The thing with exercise is that it does increase your stress resilience, so you get better at recovering from the exercise the more often you do it. But you can take it too far as well, that you become desensitized to the recovery signals,
right?
And that you just over time don't feel the same way that you need to recover as you did initially. So you're just grinding through the exercise. But I would say a good balance for most people is to do resistance training every other day, and maybe in between those resistance training days you could have like a lighter workout, maybe some aerobic exercise that isn't as intense as resistance training. That you can easily do that in between those days and recover properly. But I wouldn't start to add like a bunch of high intensity exercise every day, because that's where people tend to overtrain. They get a lot of frequent cortisol elevations, and as I said, they become desensitized to that. So they feel that it's normal, but they would actually just benefit from having a bit more frequent rest days.
And they miss out on gains, right? If they don't recover. They think that the gains are happening during the workout, but it's not. The only time is when you're resting, sleeping, you're recovering. This is when the gains, when you earn what you've worked for. So more is not always more.
I definitely notice I build more muscle if I have a rest day between the workouts.
Oh yeah. That changed my complete composition once I mastered my recovery, and that's, as you know, that's the focus of what I do. And even the program that I run is centered around recovery. So I'm able to tweak recovery in a way. Obviously, we add all of the others, but recovery is where you get your gains. As simple as that. So if you get it right, you could multiply your benefits, and I think it's super important. What do you do for recovery, for those that are wondering? Because you're in incredible shape. You're as we said earlier, you're one of the youngest people biologically in the world. And what do you do for recovery yourself?
Well, most of my recovery is centered around trying to get sleep. So I try to get at least 7 hours, and optimally more like 8 hours. And
it's the quality of that, I think, that you excel at, right?
Yeah, I think I sleep quite well, that I don't have problems with sleep, and I can fall asleep very easily. I stay asleep easily as well. So the quality of my sleep is pretty good. Outside of that, I walk. I think like some light movement is going to be beneficial to support recovery. So you that increase blood flow, you help the lymph flow, etc. So the worst thing for recovery is to just sit in a hospital bed and not move anything. You still want to move the muscles even if you exercised intensely the day afterwards, because the small microcirculation and blood flow, it helps with the recovery aspect. So I walk quite a lot. I walk maybe at least 8,000 and up to 12,000 steps a day. I try to get it at least 3-4 times a week.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and there's interesting research that doing the sauna with exercise gets you better results than just doing exercise.
Yes.
So sauna plus exercise results in lower blood pressure, higher VO2 max, and better body composition than just exercise alone. So the sauna has similar benefits to cardiovascular exercise.
Exactly.
That it increases your heart rate, gets the blood circulating again, and lowers inflammation. So it's definitely like one of the best combos to add to anyone's recovery protocol. With the cold, I do try to do the cold whenever there is an opportunity to do that. I don't think the cold is necessary for everyone. It's kind of like a bonus.
Yes.
For faster recovery, and in some situations it can also mitigate some of the adaptations you get from exercise. So if you do very intense cold exposure immediately after resistance training, then it has been seen to reduce some of the muscle growth signaling that you get from that. So it's better to do the sauna rather than the cold after exercise.
Yes.
And the cold, you can keep it for like the separate days when you're not doing resistance training, at least if your goal is muscle growth. For endurance, it's a bit like benign probably, because there's different adaptations occurring there. But after resistance training, it's better to just get the heat. Nutrition as well is a very important. I think from a nutrition perspective, you need, most importantly, protein to trigger protein synthesis. Carbohydrates are debatable whether or not you need them for recovery, but from my own experience, if I eat carbohydrates, I'm just I'm better at exercising. I'm stronger and faster, and body composition is also better if I eat more carbohydrates.
Yeah.
With fats, you need some essential fats, but fat doesn't have a direct benefit on recovery aside from just providing you with certain essential fatty acids and omega-3s, which help to lower inflammation and help with the cell function. And micronutrients, which in the short term aren't essential for recovery, but over the long term they're essential for overall health. So I eat a pretty balanced, diverse diet. I eat kind of more like a Mediterranean style diet with fish, leaner proteins, dairy, vegetables, some beans, lentils, and carbohydrates, with maybe olive oil is one of my primary fats, and some nuts.
Amazing. And the one thing that I would add to this, perhaps, that you will, I'm sure you already prioritize, and you'll see the importance of it here, is hydration. So here you have to be very, very mindful of hydration, because even though you feel cool, you're in an AC environment, your body is getting dry. So hydration is absolutely important also here. I think you have to be really intentional about that. The cool thing that I like about the place, one of many, many things, is that all of what you're talking about is super available. Like, you don't have to get out of your way to eat a healthy meal. There's so much around, there's so much possibilities, opportunities, services, etc. That are providing great olive oil, great source of meat and protein, great source of grains, and with the multitude of cultural sort of melting pot between all the different cuisines, you will likely to find something that is really, really good for you. And again, everything that you said resonates incredibly well with me. And I find every decade you make minor changes, because your body does not go through things in the same way every decade. So you have to begin to almost regulate certain aspects of how much carbs, how much protein, and how your body absorbs all of that, which is another thing for me, with enzymes and things like that, just to make sure you maximize the nutrition that you're taking, so your body is able of using as much of that as possible.
For protein, you tend to need a little bit more as you get older. So there's this concept of anabolic resistance, that your body is losing the ability to synthesize protein synthesis as it gets older. Now, most of that is because of not lifting weights and not doing resistance training.
Yes.
But there is some dietary component as well. I would say 80% is the resistance training, and maybe 20% is a diet, natural aging process related to diet. So increasing the protein intake is a bit more important as you get older. But when in my age, in my 30s, I try to aim for this 1.4 to 1.6 grams per kilogram, which based on the research is the upper threshold for maximal intake for muscle growth.
Yeah, and it's an average, right? It's not like you obsess about that, because I know you don't obsess about anything. It's an average, because some days you have good days, and occasionally you'll have a bad day. It's okay. Overall, you're kind of meeting that target. That's at least my view, and I think you're the same. Do you do any cardiovascular work? Do you run? Do you do anything like that?
Yeah, I do. I have a similar idea with cardio as I do with resistance training, that obviously too much can be harmful. If you don't do anything at all, then that's bad. So somewhere in the middle, the sweet spot. And for me, the sweet spot is similar with resistance training, that I'll try to do them like 3 times a week, maybe in between the days that I'm not doing the resistance training, and I'll aim for 30 to 60 minutes per session. So on most of those days I'll do some regular zone 2 cardio, just low intensity aerobic exercise, up to 60 minutes, and maybe once a week I'll do some intervals or sprint type of training.
Oh, amazing. So again, our routines are very, very close together. Doing sort of these variety of things throughout the week, throughout my week, makes every single one of them better. So the resistance helps my cardio, the cardio helps my resistance, the mobility helps my both my cardio and my resistance. So they all kind of complement each other to make each one slightly better every time you do it. And then pair that with recovery, and then everything starts to come together.
Yeah, absolutely. If your cardio sucks, then you will be able to build more muscle if you improve your cardio, because you'll just be able to do more reps. And you'll rest shorter between the sets.
That's the difference between gym fit and life fit, right? There's so many people that look fit, but they're really unhealthy. I mean, I come across them every day.
I mean, if you get winded walking up the stairs, then that's not a good sign. And there's research. Question is, which is important, cardio or weights for longevity? The answer is both, obviously, but there are some analyses looking at with strength, then the benefits or the maximal risk reduction for mortality peaks when you reach intermediate level of strength. So you're not going to get additional benefits if you go to like elite advanced level of strength, but for cardiovascular fitness, the benefits are up to the elite level. So it's better to be elite cardio and intermediate strength than to be elite strength and intermediate cardio. Or low cardio.
And this is where VO2 comes in, right? You and I believe in that quite a bit. So I mean, it's perhaps the number one thing to measure. And you have to do cardio for that. There's just no room. I mean, yes, high intensity intervals contribute to it, and other lifestyle sort of interventions help. But cardio is the most essential. Like if you want to have great cardiovascular system, and you want a higher VO2 max, you have to do cardio. It's just there's no room, there's no way around it.
I mean, there's some research that weightlifting can increase VO2 max, but it's only if you have a low VO2 max to begin with. So it'll get you to like a slightly higher level, but to get more advanced level, then you need to do some specific cardiovascular exercise.
Yes, for sure. And now I'm experimenting with hypoxia and hyperoxia to see how will that impact my VO2 max, my overall well-being. So I'll be in touch. I'll keep you posted, and maybe you'll come and try also at my center. Now, there's so much noise in this space, right? And so many people have, sometimes fairly decent advice, sometimes not. Lots of supplements, lots of these ideas. I know you get this question maybe many times, because I do too, and I feel bad asking you. How do you advise people to cut through the noise? How do you constantly being bombarded, like every time you open your social media, if you've looked at something to do with health once, your phone is going to be swamped with anything to do with health advice. How do you cut through the noise yourself, and how do you advise your people, the people that you work with, the people that you love, how to cut through the noise?
I think it's important to, obviously people don't have a science background in most cases. They don't understand how to differentiate between different types of evidence and what is legitimate evidence. But when listening to people providing certain health information, then it is important to be aware of what type of evidence are they sharing. So most of the online health information is either anecdotal evidence, or it's some case reports, or some low quality of evidence. They share either their own story, this worked for me. Yes, it's fine. It's a valid form of evidence, but it's at the bottom of the hierarchy of evidence.
Exactly.
It's one of the lowest quality of evidence, because if you say, okay, I ate this food, I transformed my gut health, I lost a lot of weight, I got into good health. By doing that, okay, it worked for you, great, but there's hundreds of other people who won't see those same effects, and there's hundreds of other people who did the exact opposite of you and got also similar results or
Yes.
even better results.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with anecdotal evidence, that you can find an anecdote for anything. Drink juice or juice fasting, it worked great for me, it didn't work for this person.
Yes, I know.
Or milk fasting, or whatever the health information might be. So that's the problem with this type of evidence. It doesn't mean that it's wrong, you just need to understand the context and the level of this type of evidence. There's also a lot of observational studies which are slightly better than the anecdotal evidence, because it's done on hundreds and even hundreds of thousands of people, so it's more a little bit more controlled for, and more specific, it's more statistical. So, but it's limited to the fact that it's observational. It's not a controlled experiment where people are put into a lab and they're controlled for everything that they do. But it's better than the anecdotal evidence, at least in the hierarchy of evidence. And then moving on from there, you have these randomized control trials and clinical trials, which deliberately control for different factors. They control for, let's say they're testing the effect of one supplement for people's health effects. They make sure that everyone is randomized, that you get the random distribution of people's gene pool as well, so that you eliminate the risk of genetics and the things like that affecting the results. You give everyone, and then you also double blind them. Some people get the placebo, other people get the actual treatment,
Right, yeah.
and they don't know which one is which.
Yeah.
Because placebo is very powerful. If you think that you're getting a supplement that is going to increase your eyesight or something, then you will actually start believing that.
Exactly, and sometimes it takes place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and exactly. There's studies on people who think they're on steroids actually build more muscle.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just the placebo element is important so that people wouldn't think that they're getting benefits. Or even if they think they are, then the other people will actually get the right treatment and they might get even better results.
Exactly.
And the same with the doctor as well, or the scientist. They also need to be double blinded, that they don't know either who gets who, because
Yeah.
then they might start to subconsciously treat them differently. It's called the observer effect. If you observe
Of course.
a phenomenon, then it's going to change the way it behaves. So that is considered one of the highest quality of evidence, because it first of all looks at